It was supposed to be a perfect family BBQ in our Atlanta backyard. I'm Jane Kelly, 32, single, and I'd spent all morning grilling burgers, setting up tables, hoping to bring everyone together. My younger sister, my parents, and my grandmother were there chatting under the string lights. I thought we'd have a real family moment. Then my sister stood up, pointed at my new white sneakers, and sneered. "Mom said they're as fake as you." Before I could react, she accidentally tipped her glass of cranberry juice, soaking my shoes. The sharp tang of the juice hit my nose as it dripped down my laces. My parents and grandmother froze. Then my parents burst into harsh laughter, their voices cutting through the warm evening air. My face burned, but I kept my mouth shut. I walked away, their cackles ringing in my ears. Inside my room, I stared at the stained sneakers, my hands shaking. I'd been sending my sister $1,500 every month for her rent and bills, and this was how she repaid me. I wasn't just hurt, I was done. What happened next turned our family upside down, and they never saw it coming. If you're stunned by their betrayal, hit subscribe and share this story. You won't believe how this unfolds. That night, I sat in my room staring at the stained shoes. The cranberry juice had dried into ugly red streaks, a constant jab at Rhonda's betrayal. I sank onto my bed, my mind churning. For years, I'd been sending Rhonda Blake, my younger sister, $1,500 every month. Her rent, utilities, even her phone bill, I covered it all. She'd text me sob stories about struggling to make ends meet, and I'd believed her. Family helps family, right? But tonight, her words. "Mom said they're as fake as you," kept replaying, each syllable a knife. She didn't just mock me, she used our mom's judgment to tear me down in front of everyone. And they laughed. I grabbed my phone, opened my banking app, and pulled up the recurring transfer labeled Rhonda Support. $1,500 every month, no questions asked. I thought of the overtime hours I'd worked as a data analyst, the vacations I'd skipped to keep my savings intact, all for her. For what? So she could humiliate me in my own backyard. My finger hovered over the screen, then I tapped Cancel Transfer. The app prompted, "Are you sure?" I didn't blink. Done. No heads up, no explanation. Rhonda would find out when her landlord called. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my haze. I trudged downstairs expecting a neighbor. Instead, it was my grandmother, Alice Dean. Her silver hair caught the porch light, and her sharp eyes softened when she saw me. "Jane, we need to talk," she said, stepping inside. I led her to the living room, where she settled on the couch, her posture firm but kind. "I saw what happened out there," she said. "I didn't laugh, Jane. I'm ashamed of them." Her voice held a quiet strength that steadied me. Alice leaned closer, her hands clasped. "I've been helping Rhonda too," she confessed. My eyes widened. "What?" I asked, my voice sharp. She nodded. "Her electric bills, sometimes her groceries. I kept it quiet so you wouldn't feel pressured." I felt a surge of anger, not at Grandma, but at Rhonda. How much had she been taking from us? "She's been using us both," I said, my tone bitter. Alice's jaw tightened. "I know. And it's time we stop." I paced the room, my thoughts racing. "I canceled her transfer tonight," I admitted. Alice's face lit up with a nod of approval. "That's a start," she said. "But we're not finished, Jane. They need to learn what happens when they take you for granted." My heart pounded. "What do you mean?" I asked. Alice's lips curved into a sly smile. "I have a plan," she said. "Something to make Rhonda think twice about crossing you." She wouldn't elaborate, only said, "Trust me, Jane, just wait." She squeezed my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. As Grandma left, I felt a spark of strength. Rhonda thought she could mock me and keep cashing my checks. She was wrong. Alice's words gave me hope, a sense that I wasn't alone in this fight. I trusted her. She'd always seen through people's games. I went back to my room, the stained sneakers less painful to look at now. Something was shifting, and I was ready to see it through. By morning, my phone lit up with notifications. I woke to a barrage of messages, each one sharper than the last. Rhonda Blake had sent a dozen texts, her words laced with rage. Jane, what's your deal? You canceled my payment. You think you can just cut me off. Another read. You're so selfish. You owe me an answer now. I stared at the screen, my stomach knotting. I knew she'd notice the missing transfer eventually, but her fury hit like a tidal wave. She wasn't just mad, she acted like I'd robbed her of something she was entitled to. Then, another message popped up, this one from my mom, Patricia Kelly. I opened it, hoping for a shred of fairness, but her words stung worse than Rhonda's. Jane, you're blowing this out of proportion, she wrote. Rhonda's struggling, and you know she needs help. Why would you do this to her? Not a word about the BBQ, not a hint of apology for her laughter. Mom had always favored Rhonda, but this felt like a gut punch. She wasn't trying to understand, she was taking sides, and it wasn't mine. A third notification came from my dad, George Kelly. His message was short and cold. This is irresponsible, Jane. No explanation, no follow-up, just a jab that echoed Mom's blame. I tossed my phone onto the bed, my hands trembling. My whole family was ganging up on me, acting like I'd betrayed them by stopping the money. They didn't care about how Rhonda had humiliated me or how they'd joined in her laughter. All they cared about was the cash flow I'd been pouring into Rhonda's life. I didn't reply to any of them. Not Rhonda's angry texts, not Mom's guilt trip, not Dad's curt judgment. The words I wanted to say were trapped in my chest, tangled with hurt and anger. I kept rereading their messages, each one a reminder that they saw me as a wallet, not a sister or daughter. But the more I thought about it, the stronger my resolve grew. I'd spent years propping Rhonda up, and they'd repaid me with scorn. I was done being their doormat. That afternoon, I drove to Grandma's house, craving her steady presence. Alice was in her study, surrounded by stacks of papers. She looked up, her eyes sharp but warm. "They're hounding you, aren't they?" she asked, a knowing glint in her gaze. I nodded, showing her the texts. She read them, her face tightening. "They're panicking," she said. "They know they've lost their free ride." She set my phone down and pulled out a folder marked "Expenses." "What's that?" I asked, leaning closer. "Proof," Alice said, her voice firm. "Bank statements, utility records, everything showing how much Rhonda's been taking from us." I felt a spark of hope. "What are you going to do with it?" I asked. Grandma's lips curved slightly. "I'm building a case," she said. "They need to see what happens when they take advantage of you." She didn't share more, but her confidence was contagious. I left her house with a renewed sense of strength. Rhonda and my parents could rage all they wanted, but Alice was already one step ahead. A week later, Alice called me to her house. I pulled into her driveway, the familiar sight of her tidy Atlanta bungalow calming my nerves. The past 7 days had been a storm of silence from my phone, no more. Texts from Rhonda Mom or Dad since their barrage of blame. But the quiet felt heavy, like the calm before something bigger. I stepped inside, and Grandma greeted me with a warm hug, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Come to the dining room, Jane," she said, her voice steady but laced with purpose. I followed, sensing she was about to reveal something big. Alice sat at the table, a stack of legal documents spread out before her. "I've been doing some thinking," she said, tapping a folder labeled "Property." "Rhonda's been living in that house on Oak Street, right?" I nodded, picturing the cozy rental my sister called home. "Well," Alice continued, her eyes narrowing, "I own half of it." My jaw dropped. "What?" I asked, leaning forward. "I bought it years ago with your grandfather," she explained. "We let Rhonda stay there for next to nothing, thinking she'd get on her feet. But she hasn't, and I'm done letting her freeload." Her words hit like a spark. Alice wasn't just upset, she was ready to act. "I'm transferring my share of the property," she said. "Either Rhonda pays market rent or she moves out." I stared at her, a mix of shock and admiration swirling inside me. "You're serious?" I asked. Grandma nodded, a glint of defiance in her eyes. "She needs to learn responsibility," she said. You've been carrying her too long, and so have I. I felt a weight lift knowing Alice was on my side, ready to pull the rug out from under Rhonda's entitled life. But a part of me worried would Rhonda lash out even harder. As if reading my mind, Alice added, "Don't worry, I've got more up my sleeve." The doorbell chimed and I opened it to find Susan Long, my best friend. Her dark curls bounced as she stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning my face. "You okay, Jane?" she asked, pulling me into a quick hug. I hadn't seen her since the BBQ. She'd been out of town, but I'd texted her about the fallout. "I'm getting there," I said, leading her to the dining room. Susan sat down, glancing at Alice's documents. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice curious but cautious. Alice filled her in, explaining the property ownership and her plan to force Rhonda to stand on her own. Susan's face lit up with a sly grin. "That's brilliant, Alice," she said. "But you need leverage. Something to shut down any pushback." She turned to me. "You should record Rhonda's next outburst. She's bound to say something incriminating, something that proves she's been using you." I blinked, the idea catching me off guard. "Record her?" I asked. Susan nodded. "Your phone's got a voice memo app, right? Just keep it ready. If she comes at you again, you'll have proof of how she really is." Alice clapped her hands. "I like it," she said. "Evidence like that could make things airtight." I felt a surge of strength, like a fire kindling inside me. Susan's idea was practical, sharp, exactly what I needed to feel in control. "I can do that," I said, my voice firmer than it had been in days. Alice reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "We're a team, Jane," she said. "You, me, and Susan. They won't know what hit them." Susan chimed in. "Just wait for Rhonda to slip up. She's not as smart as she thinks." We spent the next hour hashing out details: how I'd handle Rhonda's next move, how Alice would work with her lawyer to start the property transfer. Susan promised to be on standby, ready to help analyze any recordings. As I drove home, my mind buzzed with possibility. For the first time since the BBQ, I wasn't just reacting, I was planning. Alice's bold move with the house and Susan's clever suggestion gave me a sense of power I hadn't felt before. Rhonda Mom and Dad thought they could guilt me into submission, but they were wrong. I gripped the steering wheel, a quiet determination settling in. Whatever came next, I was ready to face it with Alice and Susan by my side. 2 weeks after the BBQ, Rhonda showed up at my door. I was in my Atlanta living room sorting through work emails when the doorbell rang like an alarm. I opened it to find my sister, her face twisted with anger, her arms crossed tight. "Jane, we need to talk," she snapped, pushing past me without waiting for an invite. I felt my pulse spike but stayed calm, remembering Susan's advice. I slipped my phone into my pocket, the voice memo app already open, recording silently. Rhonda paced my living room, her voice sharp. "You're manipulating Grandma, aren't you?" she accused. "You're turning her against me, trying to ruin our family." I blinked, stunned by the venom in her tone. "Rhonda, I haven't done anything to Grandma," I said, keeping my voice steady. She scoffed. "Don't play innocent. She's been acting weird, asking about my bills, my rent. You're behind this, pushing her to cut me off." Her words were wild, desperate, like she was grasping for control. I didn't respond, letting her dig her own hole while my phone captured every word. Then she dropped a bomb. "I'm going to sue," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Grandma's too old to manage her assets. She's not in her right mind, and I'll prove it in court." My stomach twisted. She was threatening Alice, the one person standing by me. "You can't be serious," I said, my voice low but firm. Rhonda smirked. "Try me. I'm not losing my house because of you." I felt a surge of anger but bit my tongue. The recording was still running, and I wasn't about to let her know. I texted Susan as Rhonda ranted on, accusing me of jealousy and betrayal. Susan replied instantly, "Keep her talking. Get it all." I nodded to myself, steering the conversation. "Rhonda, why do you think I'd manipulate anyone?" I asked, feigning confusion. She rolled her eyes. "Because you're spiteful. You've always hated that I'm Mom's favorite. You cut my money to hurt me, and now you're using Grandma to finish the job. Her words stung, but they were gold for the recording proof of her entitlement, her willingness to attack Alice to get her way. Rhonda finally stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stopped the recording, my hands shaking, but my mind clear. I called Susan, who was at her apartment across town. "You got it?" she asked, her voice eager. Every word I said, playing back the file to confirm. Rhonda's accusations, her threat to sue, her smug tone, it was all there, raw and undeniable. "Send it to me," Susan said. "This is exactly what we need." I emailed her the file, feeling a mix of relief and resolve. Rhonda thought she could bully me, but she'd just handed me a weapon. That evening, I drove to Grandma's house to update her. Alice was in her kitchen, a stack of envelopes on the counter. "I heard from my lawyer today," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "I'm sending a formal notice to Rhonda, your mom, and your dad. It states I'm ending all financial support, rent, utilities, everything." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "You're cutting them off completely?" I asked. Alice nodded. "Rhonda's had enough chances. This letter lays it out: pay market rent for the Oak Street house, or move out. No more handouts." She handed me a copy, the words printed in stark black ink, final and unyielding. I told Alice about Rhonda's visit and the recording. Her eyes lit up. "Good work, Jane," she said. "That recording will back us up if she tries anything." I felt a surge of pride. Grandma's confidence made me feel stronger, like we were building an unbreakable case. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked. Alice's face softened. "They'll get the letter too. They need to know this isn't just about Rhonda, it's about respect." I nodded, understanding her point. This wasn't just about money. It was about standing up to a family that took me for granted. As I left Alice's house, the weight of Rhonda's threats lingered, but so did my determination. With Susan's quick thinking and Alice's bold move, we were ready for whatever came next. Rhonda's outburst had given us leverage, and Alice's letter would hit her hard. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for the truth. 3 weeks later, Susan handed me a USB drive. We were at her apartment in Atlanta, the late afternoon sun filtering through her living room blinds. "You need to hear this," she said, her voice low but urgent as she plugged the drive into her laptop. I leaned forward, my heart racing, unsure what to expect. Susan had been working on something since Rhonda's outburst at my house, and her serious tone told me it was big. She hit play, and Rhonda's voice filled the room, sharp and smug. "Jane's so easy to manipulate," she said, her words dripping with disdain. "I just cry a little, and she sends the money. She's too soft to say no." My stomach churned as I listened. The recording wasn't from our confrontation. It was Rhonda talking to someone else, plotting how to keep milking me for cash. "Who's she talking to?" I asked, my voice tight. Susan shook her head. "I don't know yet, but it's damning." I nodded, gripping the armrest. Rhonda's words weren't just cruel, they were proof of her calculated betrayal. "This changes everything," I said. Susan grinned. "Exactly. Keep this safe. It's our ace." The next day, I met Alice at her lawyer's office downtown. Grandma sat across from a man in a crisp suit, her posture calm but resolute. "Jane, this is about protecting us," she said, sliding a document toward me. "I'm adding a no contest clause to my will." I frowned, confused. "What does that mean?" I asked. The lawyer, adjusting his glasses, explained, "It ensures that if anyone challenges Alice's will, like Rhonda's threat to claim she's not competent, they'll lose their inheritance entirely." Alice nodded. "Rhonda thinks she can scare us with a lawsuit. This stops her cold." I felt a rush of awe at Grandma's foresight. "You're locking her out," I said, a smile breaking through. Alice's eyes twinkled. "She's had her chances, Jane. No more games." We reviewed the paperwork, the lawyer outlining how the clause would safeguard Alice's assets, including her share of the Oak Street house. I handed him the USB drive explaining Rhonda's recorded words. He listened, his expression hardening. "This strengthens our case. he said. If Rhonda tries to contest this recording, shows her intent to manipulate. I felt a surge of confidence between the clause and the recording. We were building a fortress. That evening, my phone rang. It was Mom, her name on the caller ID, sparking a mix of dread and curiosity. I answered, bracing myself. Jane, we need to talk. Patricia said, her voice soft but strained. This has gone too far. Rhonda's upset. Your dad's worried. Can't we just work this out? I clenched my jaw, her words echoing the same guilt trip from her texts. Mom, I'm done being pushed around. I said, my tone firm. Rhonda humiliated me, and you backed her up. I'm not going back. There was a long pause. You're breaking our family apart, she said, her voice cracking. I shook my head, though she couldn't see it. No, Mom. You did that when you laughed. I hung up, my heart heavy but resolute. I drove to Grandma's house to decompress. Alice was in her study sorting through more papers. I told her about Mom's call, and she sighed. Patricia's always tried to keep the peace, she said, but she's blind to Rhonda's faults. I nodded, the weight of Mom's words lingering. She thinks I'm the problem, I said. Alice reached for my hand. You're not Jane. You're standing up for yourself. That's strength. Her words grounded me, pushing back the guilt. I showed her the USB drive and she smiled. This plus the will makes us untouchable, she said. As I left, I felt a clarity I hadn't known before. Rhonda's recorded scheming, Alice's legal move, and my refusal to bend to Mom's pleas, they all locked into place. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was taking control. Susan's quick thinking and Grandma's resolve had given me the tools to protect myself. Whatever Rhonda or my parents tried next, I was ready to face it head on. A month after the BBQ, a post in an Atlanta community group caught my attention. I was scrolling through my phone at home when I saw Rhonda's name pop up in a local Facebook group. Her post was a long, venomous rant accusing me of manipulating Grandma to steal family assets. Jane's turned Alice against us, trying to take everything she wrote, painting me as a greedy schemer. My heart sank as I read the comments. Some neighbors believed her, others asked for proof. I felt a familiar sting of betrayal, but this time, anger overpowered hurt. Rhonda wasn't just attacking me privately. She was dragging my name through the mud for all of Atlanta to see. I called Susan immediately. She's gone too far, I said, my voice shaking. Susan, calm as ever, replied, Good. She's given us an opening. Let's use it. We met at her apartment where she pulled up the USB drive with Rhonda's damning recording, the one where she called me easy to manipulate and bragged about exploiting me. We post this, Susan said, her eyes sharp. We upload the audio and Alice's letter explaining Rhonda's freeloading. Let the truth speak for itself. I hesitated, worried about escalating things publicly. It's time, Jane, Susan urged. She started this. We finish it. With Alice's approval, we crafted a response post in the same group. I attached the recording and a scanned copy of Grandma's letter, which detailed years of financial support Rhonda had squandered, rent, utilities, groceries, all paid by us while she played the victim. This is the real story, I wrote, keeping it short but firm. Rhonda's lies don't hold up. Susan hit post and we watched as the group exploded with reactions. Comments poured in, shocked at Rhonda's words in the audio. She said that about her own sister, one neighbor wrote. Another, This is disgusting. Jane, you're better off without her. By morning, the post had hundreds of shares, and Rhonda's reputation was in tatters. Word got back to me through a mutual friend that Rhonda tried to delete her original post, but it was too late. The community had seen her true colors. Alice's lawyer confirmed Rhonda couldn't afford to buy out the Oak Street house at market value. With no financial support from us, she had no choice but to move out. I heard she packed up within days, leaving for a cramped apartment across town. Mom and Dad, who'd backed her all along, stayed silent, their own credibility dented by association. They didn't reach out. and I didn't expect them to. Their silence spoke louder than any apology could. I made a choice that week. I blocked Rhonda, Patricia, and George on my phone and social media. No more texts, no more calls, no more guilt trips. I kept my line open to Alice and Susan, the only ones who'd stood by me. It wasn't easy. Cutting off family felt like carving out a piece of myself, but it was necessary. I'd spent years giving them everything only to be mocked and used. No more. One quiet Sunday, I drove to Piedmont Park needing space to think. The Atlanta skyline loomed in the distance, the autumn leaves crunching under my boots as I walked the trails. I thought about everything: Rhonda's betrayal, Mom and Dad's complicity, the community's response. I'd been raised to believe family came first no matter what. But that belief had cost me my peace, my savings, my self-respect. Standing up to them with Alice and Susan by my side taught me something vital. My worth isn't tied to what I give others. I don't have to sacrifice myself for toxic relationships, even if they're family. I deserve better, and I'll protect that moving forward. To everyone who's followed this story, thank you for listening. It's been a journey, and I'm grateful for your support. The lesson here is clear. Put your value first and don't let anyone, family or not, take advantage of you. If this resonates, share your thoughts below. What would you have done in my place? Your stories matter, and I'd love to hear them.